All right, lucky me, lucky you. Today I have the You from Sanremo helping me to judge tendencies of roast profile. This is a quality control measure that we can take, utilizing the flexibility of the paddle, and that's going to give me an idea on whether we've actually approached this coffee properly from a quality control standpoint before it reaches cafe. Now, when we put a coffee out into the cafe, we want it to be reasonably forgiving. We know real world cafe environment, things get busy, things can become imperfect at times. So I'm gonna have a look at this coffee, go into a little bit of detail here, and then show how the You is gonna help me. The coffee, it is a beautiful anaerobic natural sidra from Ecuador. Shout out to Pepe, producing these incredible forest grown coffees that have great terroir and isn't covered up too much with process. This is anaerobic natural, reasonably short fermentation time, and we're gonna make this into a beautiful espresso, hopefully. So basically, a few things we're gonna look for with anaerobic naturals. They can have a tendency for sharp acid in espresso if it's not managed properly in roast and extraction. So the anaerobic processing can give us more acetic acid, and you will get lactic acid in there as well, but the acetic is what can really push things to become sharp in espresso format. At the same time, the naturals can also have a tendency to a little bit more bitterness and roughness on the palate if things aren't managed right. So if we push roast that little bit more to round out that acid, then that bitterness can become a problem. And that roughness, especially on the finish. So we're gonna be looking at tactile qualities. We're also gonna be looking specifically at taste balance qualities, so the acid mixing with the bitterness and the sweetness properly. So I'm gonna utilize the You. We're gonna find a good recipe first at a normal 9-bar extraction, the way we usually set up a lot of our machines commercially. And then we're gonna do a little bit of left and right with some pressures to have a look at tendencies of roast profile. So let's get into it. All right, so we've started off real simple, 9-bar extraction, standard set point. Now, I wanted to judge grind size, I wanted to judge recipe first, see if we're putting that coffee into a good box. We found that around 20.5 grams in, around 39 grams out in 25 to 30 is looking pretty good for this coffee. So that's gonna be my reference point. So at this first point, and then I wanna understand tendencies from left to right. So next shot, I'm gonna go a slight drop. I'm gonna go between 8.3 and 8.5 bar. And I wanna see what happens when I pull back on extraction a little bit. All right, so this time paddle. I'm going slightly lower bar pressure than before. So my set point is gonna be between 8.3, 8.5, so I'm at 8.4 bar now. And we're gonna understand if we pull him back on that bar pressure just slightly, is the acidity gonna go dramatically out of balance? If so, we need to possibly look at roast profile. Now I'm gonna do one more on the other side. I'm gonna go 9.5, 9.6 bar. All right, paddle again. 9.5 bar. All right. Okay, so all set to go. We have our 9-bar, our 8.5 bar-ish, so a little bit lower pressure and a little bit higher pressure. They're all side by side. Have a quick taste through each of them to understand tendencies. So first up, 9-bar. It's not sort of a chocolatey bitterness. It's a little bit of floral bitterness maybe. So now when I drop the pressure, I'm probably going to expect to see that acidity brighten up. I want to see what that's doing to the palate, whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing. or whether everything goes really sour, the cup falls apart, then it's possibly that we want to put a tiny bit more on roast. So the acidity vibrancies come up. However, it's a positive. I'm not getting any sourness. The bitterness in the back is smoothed out more. So this seems to be a positive. It's bright, but yeah, it's still reasonably round. The texture is quite smooth. I want to go up to the higher bar pressure, that 9.5, and understand, is that a step down from both of these? Am I getting more bitterness? Is this showing me that possibly we're putting a little bit more roast on this coffee than we want? All right, so that bitterness has shot up dramatically. That's giving a rougher palate. The vibrancy in the front of the palate isn't so prominent. I'm missing a little bit of that front palate vibrancy to give me that transition smoothly over the palate. I'm wanting to sit definitely in that 9 bar, 8.5 bar sort of world. The tendency across all 3 cups, because I've tasted that bitterness in the higher level, in that higher bar pressure, I've seen that that's a real big negative, and then it's drawn my attention towards that bitterness in these 2 cups as the negative as well. So I'm gonna do one more check where I drop that bar pressure down a little bit lower. I'm gonna go down to 8 bar and just see what happens to that vibrancy and the bitterness, and see if I'm getting a better perception of bitterness. If it is an improved cup over any of these, it's telling me that we want to pull back roast profile just a smidge, so maybe 1-2% development less, to just reduce that bitterness slightly, so that the coffee sits really nicely in that sort of 9 bar window, and it's super easy to work with for baristas in the cafe. All right, so we've got the lower bar pressure again. So we've gone down to 8 bar. I'm gonna have a look at the acidity structure. Does it go really sour? I mean, I could understand by dropping that pressure that we could get that sour acid, but I also just wanna look at the bitterness. Does that bitterness come down to a nicer level comparing with these 3 cups? So I just wanna have a quick look. So that bitterness there, it has remained. It's dropped down a tiny little bit, but it's still a problem. So by tasting these coffees side by side, looking at tendencies of taste balance and of the tactile, we can see that with the different bar pressures and even with different recipes, that this coffee has that tendency towards bitterness. Wanting to pull back on roast profile just a tiny little bit so we can have it sitting nice and balanced in that 9 bar sort of extraction window, where a lot of cafes out there, without the luxury of being able to adjust pressure on the fly, you've got multiple different coffees running at that same bar pressure. We want it to be able to fit into that nice, effortless balance box once it gets into the cafe, so we're getting as many good expressions of this coffee served as possible. So thanks to the Sanremo YOU, with all of its flexibility, has helped me to judge this roast profile.